Many people who are not accused of crimes come into contact with the justice system when they're asked to be surety for someone in order to get them out of jail. This week on Don't Talk TV, I'd like to discuss this important aspect to Canadian bail law. Hello, my name's Nicholas Wansbutter. I'm a criminal defense lawyer in Stratford, Ontario, and this is Don't Talk TV. Now, in Canadian bail law, accused people don't have to post bail per se. We don't have bail bondsmen like they do in the United States. But one form of bail that we do have is a recognizance with a surety who's backing it up. Now, I stress that's surety, not a surety. Now, the way bail works in Canada is every person is guaranteed under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms the right to reasonable bail while they're awaiting trial, rather than being kept in custody. In Canada, there's a system of progressive rungs on a ladder, if you will, from a promise to appear, which is simply what it sounds like, a promise that one will attend court. Then there's a promise to appear with an undertaking attached, and an undertaking is another word for a promise. So it's a promise to adhere to certain terms, such as not communicating with a certain individual or not going certain places. Then up from that, there's a recognizance, where the accused person enters into a recognizance, which is like an undertaking. It's a promise to follow certain terms, but backed up with a financial obligation. Then there's a recognizance that's also guaranteed by a surety, where the surety is also entering into that recognizance. So what is the role of surety? A surety is a person who agrees to take responsibility for an accused person. Often the term is used of civilian jailer, and the reason for that is because of the obligations of the surety to, one, ensure that the accused person attends each and every one of the court dates that they're required to attend, and secondly, the surety must make sure that the accused person follows each and every term of their recognizance. So if they're not allowed to contact a certain individual, the surety has to make sure that they do not speak to that individual. Now, depending on the case and depending on the terms that are imposed by the court, the surety will have different obligations. They may be required to impose a curfew and make sure that that person that they're supervising is inside the house at a certain time. It may involve them keeping an eye on who they're having phone conversations with and even spying on the person that they're supervising to a certain extent. And again, it's not a situation where the surety simply has to watch the person and report to the authorities if they breach their terms. The surety has to actively ensure that they follow the terms, and the surety has to act as a guarantor of an individual's good behavior. The surety has to promise a financial obligation to the court, and what that is in a way, it's requiring you to put your money where your mouth is. So it's not just saying, as surety, I will make sure that X follows their terms. It's also, I know X and I believe that they will follow the terms, and I'm willing to pledge $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 to guarantee their good behavior. It's also saying that I know this is serious and I'm promising you I'm going to do my job, because otherwise I know I have to pay this money. Now, an important piece to this is that even if a surety does their job to the best of their abilities, they may be ordered by the court to pay the penal sum that's promised in the recognizance. I often liken this to being a guarantor on a loan to the bank. If you are a guarantor on a loan, you're guaranteeing to the bank that this loan will be paid no matter what. And the bank won't care if you've done everything in your power to make sure that the person you guaranteed for has paid. If they're not paid, they're coming after you for the money. So it's similar with being surety. Even if you did your job to the best of your ability, the government may come after you for the money you pledged on the recognizance because you guaranteed that person's good behavior. It is, of course, important to keep in mind that being a surety is completely voluntary, and you can ask to be removed at any time. Now, what are the qualifications to be a surety? There aren't any hard and fast rules. For example, having a criminal record doesn't necessarily disqualify you as being surety. Now, the judge or justice of the peace is going to assess each individual on their merits, and they want to see whether a proposed surety is someone of good character, someone who's trustworthy, and someone who they think is going to actively enforce the bail, and someone who the accused person is going to respect. So having a criminal record could impact that, and it'll depend on how recent the criminal record is, what the charges were for, and whether things have changed in your life since you received those charges. One thing that could be said to be an automatic disqualifier would be if you're pending on charges yourself, because when you yourself have to come to court, you can't be taking responsibility for another individual. Likewise, there isn't any specific amount of money or income that you need to have. It can certainly be an asset to being a surety to be able to pledge, look, I can pledge $3,000 for this person's good behavior, and I can back that up because I have $4,000 in the bank, or I have this asset that could easily be sold in the event that the government wanted to collect on the recognizance. However, there is a recognition in criminal courts that being someone from a less privileged background shouldn't be a bar to being released, and if your family and friends are only people who aren't particularly financially privileged, that shouldn't prevent you from being released if they're otherwise of good behavior and able to back up what they have to say. And generally, recognizances don't have a set dollar amount. It'll be tailored to the individual and the surety that they've presented. So for some individuals, $200 might be a very significant amount. For other individuals, it might have to be $2,000 to have that same bite, if you will, to satisfy the court that this person's going to meet their obligations because they're not going to want to lose that money. And the accused person is going to respect that individual because they know this is a significant amount of money for them and they're not going to put their mother or father or good friend at risk. Courts, and especially crown attorneys, will also look at how well does a surety know the person that they're vouching for. If you don't know an individual, it's very hard to guarantee their good behavior, or it may be brought into question whether this individual is going to listen to the surety or not. And sureties must be prepared to be vigorously cross-examined by a crown attorney. So it's very important for proposed sureties to consider seeking independent legal advice. When I'm representing a client and I'm speaking to a proposed surety, I can't give them independent legal advice because I'm working for the client, I'm working for the accused person. My obligation is to do everything in their best interest, which might not necessarily be in the best interest of a proposed surety. So if you've been asked by a lawyer or an accused person to act as a surety and you're watching this video looking for information, you can feel free to call me at my 1-855 number listed below. This video in and of itself is not legal advice, nor is it intended to be. So you can call me, call another lawyer for advice, and we'd be more than happy to assist you and walk you through the process. So this has been another episode of Don't Talk TV. I hope you found it useful, and if you have found it informative, please consider subscribing on YouTube or on Facebook. Please like and share.